I'd like to welcome all of you to the MIT Energy Initiative Colloquium. We're really pleased to have with us this afternoon, or this evening, I guess it's in between, Mr. Roberto Casula from E&I. Mr. Casula is the Chief Development, Operations, and Technology Officer at ENI. He, in that position, runs ENI's global technology operations, its development activities, and its R&D activities. He's had a distinguished career at ENI, which has taken him all over the world. I think he spent a lot of that time in Africa. He's a graduate, he's a mining engineer by training, coming from his hometown university of University of Cagliari on the island of Sardinia. So I don't know how we got you off of there to come here, but thank you. Roberto is going to talk about some of the really interesting challenges and opportunities for a global energy company like ENI. And I think you'll see in this talk threads of some of ENI's activities as a inaugural member of the Oil and Gas Climate Initiative group, which started in Paris, I think, about a year and a little bit longer ago. He is a very dynamic person, and I've enjoyed many conversations with Roberto. Really looking forward to the presentation and discussion. Roberto.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you for your kind words. And good afternoon or good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is really a great honor to have been invited to deliver this fall colloquium to you. You know, the word colloquio in Italian means a job interview. And that's what it feels like just now. So please be nice to me. I'm sure you will. So anyway, when I was asked to speak to you, I had to come up with something that an oil industry person like myself could say in such a world-renowned innovation hub. This is especially true if many of you may feel that the extractive industries are not such a fertile territory for out-of-the-box thinking. And you would be mostly correct in this. However, circumstances do change, and action that directly impacts the extractive industry is demanded. But firstly, let me add something to what Bob already said about me. He said I'm from the wonderful Mediterranean island of Sardinia, and now you might be forgiven for thinking that Sardinia is a million miles away from the oil industry. But you may be surprised to learn that the Cagliari University is one of the foremost schools for mining engineering. And that's what I studied. Although I joined ENI in 1988 as a reservoir engineer. I'm very glad that in the intervening 28 years of career, I've been able to move around the globe a lot. I think I have acquired decent knowledge, not just of the business and processes of the oil industry. I have also been fortunate that I've met so many people from such diverse cultures. About this, I spent a lot of time in Africa, Middle East, and during this, ENI was growing considerably, both from an equity and from a reputational point of view. And since I was appointed Chief Development Operations and Technology Officer in 2014, I've been privileged and challenged in equal measure by the innovation side of things. This is something that I believe will bring great change to how we relate to energy. And here is the first of many paradoxes we will hear today. Can innovation bring great change to the oil and gas industry? Does the oil and gas industry even want this change? Yes, the oil and gas industry is a little conservative, but this is the result of trying to balance the wishes and the requirements of so many stakeholders. Now, though, the industry is being called to almost rethink itself. And as the world demands and deserves better access to cleaner, more sustainable energy. Society is driven by energy. We need it more than ever. We are using it more than ever, and therefore we need to be able to produce it from an ever more diverse but complementary range of sources. It is no longer a case of explore, produce, export, consume. There needs to be global engagement in ensuring resources are truly sustainable. This is certainly much easier said than done. For me, the challenges for the energy industry and for the whole world are all about getting the right balance. We need to ensure the world can access sustainable energy, but at the same time, we need to keep fighting climate change. The goal of keeping the increase in global temperature below the 2 degrees Celsius limit is widely accepted now, and after the Paris COP21, also widely subscribed to. When a few weeks ago, Ban Ki-moon spoke of the trilemma of energy security, energy equity, and environmental sustainability, he referred to a new world of opportunity and investment. I think the word opportunity really jumps out here, but not opportunity for global energy companies to make more profit, not only that. Rather, it is the opportunity for people to have fair access to energy sources, wherever they may be. So for me, balance is the key, but here lies another paradox. In the coming decades, world population, as you know, will grow from the current 7.4 billion to about 9.2 billion, with global energy demand growing by 30%. We can report that there has been a shift in energy consumption. Historical energy consumption was mainly determined by OECD countries. Between the 70s and the 90s, 18% of the population was consuming more than 55% of the world energy. And the rapid growth of the past 2 decades means that the non-OECD countries now account for around 60% of the global energy demand. So, in short, we will need a lot more energy that is much more evenly distributed. And as the UN Secretary General alluded to, we are faced with ensuring that all the world's population has access to sustainable energy, whilst at the same time a cap is kept on emissions. For this, quite simply, the current energy paradigm is no longer viable. Some numbers for you on per capita, annual per capita energy consumption. In Europe is 5,000 kilowatt hours. Here in US is the double. Well, in Africa is only about 200 kilowatt hours. Africa is the place, as I already said earlier, where I spent much of my career, a place that is not only very dear to my heart, but is a place also which is central to Eni business, identity, and history. As I've just said, average energy use here lags very far behind the rest of the world. Africa has around 16% of the world's population, but consumes only about 5% of the energy. And more shockingly, 2/3 of the population of sub-Saharan Africa have no access to constant and dependable energy supply. That's something in the region of 650 million people, more or less twice the population of United States. And globally, 3 billion people rely on burning solid fuels, biomass like wood, charcoal, crop, animal waste for cooking, heating, and lighting. Burning biomass in confined spaces is a huge health risk. And WHO figures tell us that more than 4 million people a year die prematurely from illness attributable to the household air pollution caused by the inefficient use of solid fuels. Beyond this shameful and avoidable waste of life, there is the environmental question. Biomass still makes up about 50% of the energy mix and is a major contributory factor to CO2 emissions. Just imagine if we were able to address this awful problem and replace biomass as a domestic fuel. This could save a huge number of lives and increment the life quality of countless millions, maybe billions, as well as greatly benefiting the environment. Access to energy means access to development and opportunity. If you can access to energy, you can have clean water, sanitation and healthcare, reliable and efficient lighting, heating, cooking, mechanical power, transport and telecommunication services. Basically, access to energy means access to the 21st century. It was energy that powered the industrialization of Europe and US, that shaped the world in the past century, and hopefully this will be the case for Africa in the 21st century. However, as has happened in Africa up to now, a high proportion of the natural resources, especially oil, gas, and other minerals, has been produced in the continent but shipped elsewhere to support and develop other economies. This is where the imbalance is strongest. This is where Africa is at a distinct disadvantage. The paradigm, the approach, and the model is unsustainable, not to say unfair. Africa resource wealth is not limited to minerals. In my personal experience, the potential of African people matches the potential of the natural resources. But I think there is another African resource. When we often hear about the Amazon rainforest as being a sort of planetary lung, but the African equivalent that stretches across the tropics perform exactly the same function and is under a serious threat. The rapidly expanding populations require even more vulnerable resources. And the tropical rainforest is currently estimated to provide 75% of the fuel burned every day. The depletion rate is already far greater than the replacement, and this signals even greater alarm. This is even more relevant when we consider that 80% of the oil production is sold outside the continent, doing little to bolster domestic infrastructure and impeding industrial diversification. This leads to ever greater reliance to produce and export mineral resources, truly a vicious circle. More than ever, locally produced resources need to stay local. It's like the adage that if a person has a fish, they are fed for a day, but if they have a fishing rod, they are fed for a life. So today we accept energy from Africa, but we are reticent to accept the humanity that may come in the same direction because people have been forced to migrate due not having a metaphorical fishing rod. There is a widespread fear of the tide of humanity that mobilizes thanks to unsustainable economic conditions and excessive population growth. Every night, at least in Europe, we see reports from the beaches of the Mediterranean of another boatload of tired, poor, huddled masses. These are the words I saw in the Statue of Liberty. And sometimes they are the lucky ones, although we can't see in their eyes the hope and joy of starting a new life in a new place. And building barriers is not the answer. There needs to be a sustainable addressing of this shared global issue. Einstein, allow me, is reputed to have said that only a fool could do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. Well, we need to stop doing the same thing. We need to change the paradigm rather than just change the way we address the paradigm. So, is there a way of increasing energy access and use whilst not worsening an already difficult environmental situation? In our view, the answer is an unequivocal yes. Let me explain how. The trajectory of the world is set toward the goal of sustainable energy. There is no question of that. We are facing a problem that is beyond simply addressing an imbalance. We are talking of the biggest issue currently faced by mankind. It's not possible to simply declare that we will all use less energy and distribute it better. There needs to be a systemic and all-encompassing method to tackle the whole spectrum of the energy issue, its production, its distribution, its use. The good news is that there, at last, seems to be a common will to do this. The last decades have been marked by disagreement, non-alignment, even denial. However, events like the COP21 in Paris really did seem to give a refreshing commitment through the signatories of the deal that was struck and in the content of the accord. It seems finally that we are all on the same page. At the same time, some of the world's biggest energy companies have united to form the Oil and Gas Climate Initiative. The way the OGCI works is that while each company defines its own scope, the group will work as a unit on the wider objective of addressing climate change. They will use their own expertise and know-how to find practical solutions to the areas being tackled, such as carbon capture, storage and utilization, the role of gas, reducing methane emissions, energy efficiency and transport. But this also changes another paradigm, the one that makes energy companies culpable for the climate change. Well, we have now the opportunity to become an actor in the reversal of this. For Eni's contribution to OGCI and beyond, we think we have one solution to address energy poverty and access to decarbonization. We truly hope for a fully decarbonized future where renewable energy resources provide the whole planet energy requirements. And that time will come. However, it is still pretty far away, so we need to engage with something that we have in abundance, but equally important. Something that Africa has in abundance. I'm talking about natural gas. As a fossil fuel, natural gas is the cleanest, most efficient, and adaptable way of generating electricity. It can be converted into vehicle fuel, it can be transported, for instance, liquefied natural gas. Most crucially, it is considerably less impactful from a CO2 point of view. Just to hypothesize, if gas were to replace coal in power generation overnight, global emissions level would be slashed, and we would already be pretty far down the road for preserving the 2 degrees target. So in this case, for us, gas is the bridge. It can be brought in as a backup to intermittence, the main issue we have with wind and solar, until there is a considerable progress on storage capacity. So, in our opinion, as a partner to renewables, it is ideal. And Africa has great abundance of both gas and renewables. For gas, the continent, latest figure, has something like 14,500 billion cubic meter of proven reserves, not considering the resources recently found, even by us, in Mozambique and Tanzania, which are huge. whereas solar, wind, hydro, and geothermal are potentially unlimited. There is a huge potential to develop energy infrastructures, but there is also significant challenge in building off-grid solutions. This comes back to what I was saying earlier regarding the danger of relying on biomass for domestic cooking, lighting, and heating. If there was a way where remote homes and communities far from existing or future infrastructure could become autonomously powered, we could simultaneously address energy poverty, the developmental lag, and environmental damage. Essentially a microcosmic answer to Ban Ki-moon trilemma. Is there a way? Yes, there is. And to do this, we need willingness and we need the actors. For willingness, it seems that COP21 has crystallized global commitment to real action. On a more tangible level, E&I and our chief executive, Claudio Descalzi, first and foremost, are totally convinced about leading the change process which cannot be delayed any further. The amount of CO2 we have left in the budget is already down to about 30% of what we started with in the years of industrialization, and the longer we go on the more serious the repercussions become. As for the actors, ideally we would combine human ingenuity in research with industrial know-how and a multinational spread. Now, where could we find such a partnership? Well, happily, we are here in the very front line of the challenge. Our partnership in the solar frontier low carbon energy centers have already provided us with hope and results. And I feel also it is right to dedicate a few words to what we are doing, indeed what I'm doing here today. As you may have guessed from the mainstay of what I've said, energy transition is our shared objective. And when I talk of bringing autonomous off-grid power to remote location, we have enormous faith in a flexible photovoltaic project, which is starting to bear fruit. One of the main issues was the expense and return on investment for a widespread diffusion of solar technology. But this project has seen us engage with nanotechnologies, materials with scale-up potential that make the effectiveness of material much greater and with the cost, whilst the cost is significantly reduced. Although this level of investment is a significant condition, we need to concentrate much more on the long-term benefits that this will bring, as the cost, and not just fiscal, will be many times greater the longer we leave it. Another leap in progress comes from the advances we made together in the concentrated solar power. In the luminescent solar concentrator, which give us the opportunity to construct smart windows that both provide electrical charge and create significant energy savings. We are currently moving on to the next stage with this, examining how large-scale deployment of this technology can be managed. In Italy, we are at the cusp of trialing many of these solar applications in our brownfield sites. These are mainly our industrial sites that are no longer used for their original purpose. So we are using the area available to carry out large-scale experiments of applications that have had success in the labs. Finally, something that we are already ready to deploy as a prototype level is what I was saying earlier, the concentrating solar power. Our partnership with MIT on this type of technology has resulted in a much easier fabrication process, 30% lowering in the cost of producing energy. And the potential, especially in the off-grid application, is huge. Coupling solar energy production with great leaps in storage capacity will mean that we are several steps nearer being able to address the biomass issue once and for all. outside our partnership with MIT, let me tell you something about the E&I Award. This is an annual prize for research in the field of energy and environment, which has been going for the last 9 years. However, for its upcoming 10th birthday, it gets a makeover. Next year, awards will no longer be based on business areas, but rather directed toward aspects of energy transition with a focus on renewable and energy access in developing countries. One of the awards we are proud of will be the Young African Talent Award, which encourages and recognizes energy and environment projects that will be applied in the country of origin. Scientific and technological development is the real hope when we talk of paradigm change. To develop mechanisms and infrastructures, you need to have mindsets that are similarly dynamic. Now, I said at the start of my talk that the energy industry is well known for its conservative. Well, yet here I am, an energy industry person, talking to a distinguished audience at this most prestigious research institution. And this might not have happened 20 years ago. And it may have a lot to do with the word we heard a lot recently, disruption. The recent past has been marked by a very high incidence of disruption. Economic, political, geopolitical, scientific, personal, you name it, it's been disrupted. The early 21st century might just become as a period when disruption become part of the norm. Even 10 years ago, would any of us here have even thought that leaving the house without one of these phone would seriously affect our ability to function normally, just a phone? Well, but this is exactly what has happened. We have been disrupted. So what I'm trying to say now is that we have to encourage the need to be disruptive. And this is where MIT comes into its own. The kind of unconventional thinking that happens here is a testimony to MIT ability to engender a whole new world of approach. This is, you know very well, this is the foremost center of research in the world, and it is here that ideas that shape the future are conceived, designed, deployed. World-size problems demand world-size research to bring world-class answers. Human ingenuity is at its apotheosis here, in our opinion. When, you know him, Carl Sagan said, it is the tension between creativity and skepticism that has produced the stunning and unexpected findings of science. We truly hope that what we do together is both unexpected and stunning. I thank you for listening to me. Thank you.